You weren't just chosen, you were marked. Not by human hands, not by society, but by something far older. Something that whispers across dimensions and sees what this world can't. Before you ever knew your own name, before you could walk, trust, or even dream, the universe had already assigned your soul to a path far beyond comprehension. One that would scare most people into silence. But not you. You didn't come here to blend in. You didn't come here to be comfortable. You came here to break patterns, to burn illusions, and to reclaim timelines that were hijacked by forces long before your ancestors could even resist. And that's why the darkness noticed you early. They didn't wait until you were grown. They didn't give you time to figure things out. They came for your mind, your confidence, your voice, as soon as they detected your frequency. Because your soul sings in a wavelength that doesn't just survive darkness. It exposes it. And they knew, if they couldn't stop you early, they'd never be able to stop you at all. So they tried. They tried to shatter you through pain that made no sense. Cycles of abandonment, loss, betrayal, all wrapped in a fog of confusion. They made you question yourself, doubt your path, numb your gifts. But here's what they didn't see coming. Every storm they sent, every trap they built, every whisper of self-destruction they planted, all of it became fuel for your becoming. And now the same dark forces that tried to block your light are being forced to serve your mission. Let that sink in. The universe doesn't waste energy. Every shadow, every entity, every force is subject to divine order. And when someone like you walks the earth, someone who's been anointed, tested, refined by fire, the universe reroutes even darkness to make sure your path unfolds. Even demons, even the ones assigned to slow you down, they've been rerouted, reassigned, and now they clear the way for you, not because they want to, but because they have to. That's what happens when destiny reaches critical mass. That's what happens when someone finally remembers who they are. Because your awakening didn't just change you, it shifted the spiritual structure around you. You're not operating on the same plane anymore. You used to be vulnerable to attacks, but now you walk through fire untouched. You move through resistance like it was designed for your growth, because it was. Every enemy you faced was a teacher in disguise. Every spiritual attack was training for the battles that would come. And now you're untouchable, not because you're aggressive, but because you are aligned, because you've surrendered to the divine timing that governs this entire realm, because your soul isn't playing by human rules, and spiritual forces have no choice but to bow to that kind of authority. You're not just protected, you are commanded forward. And the very entities that once tried to suffocate your light are now paving the road for it to reach others. It's a secret most don't talk about because they think of darkness as only evil. But darkness is also a worker of the divine. It can't win, it can only test, it can't destroy destiny. It can only shape it, and in your case, it made you unstoppable. So now, every plan to delay you has turned into acceleration. Every attempt to isolate you has only deepened your connection to the source. Every loss that was meant to break you has rebuilt you into someone that demons cannot stand to be near, and yet they're forced to stand guard. Forced to move out of your way, forced to obey spiritual laws they cannot override. Why? Because your soul signed a contract before this life. And in that contract, it was written, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every energy, no matter how dark, will serve your elevation." You don't need to fight anymore. You just need to remember, because when you operate from memory, not trauma, not fear, but divine memory, you activate the blueprint of who you've always been. That's when the atmosphere shifts. That's when the attacks stop working. That's when the same demons that once taunted you fall silent in your presence. You feel it, don't you? The way spaces open for you now. The way things that used to feel impossible suddenly bend. That's not luck. That's authority. That's spiritual compliance. That's divine law in motion. And you are its living proof. So, if you ever doubted your strength, if you ever questioned why your life was so hard, if you ever wondered why you've always felt like you were walking through a war zone, invisible to others, it's because you are, but not as a victim, as a leader, as one of the few who came here not just to survive, but to restructure the very matrix others are trapped in. You're not here for comfort. You're here for liberation, and everything, even the darkness, is now being forced to serve that purpose. Have you ever stopped to wonder why life felt like a battle long before you ever stepped into your purpose? Why you were spiritually attacked as a child before you even knew what a spiritual attack was? It's not because you were weak. It's because you were dangerous to the systems, the illusions, the strongholds. The world tries to convince you that your sensitivity was a flaw, that your empathy was a burden, that your constant awareness, your vivid dreams, your relentless inner knowing were all just signs that something was wrong with you. But in truth, those were the earliest signs of your activation. You weren't meant to be numb. You weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to perceive, to walk between realms, to see what others ignore. And that made you a threat to every hidden agenda, every generational curse, every demon still attached to bloodlines that feared being broken. So they attacked through people, through emotions, through circumstances that were designed not to test your strength, but to confuse you about your identity. Because the greatest weapon darkness uses isn't force, it's forgetfulness. If it can make you forget your origin, forget your authority, forget that your light is encoded with divine contracts, then it can stall your destiny for years. And that's exactly what it tried to do. But the reason you're still here, the reason your mind didn't break, your heart didn't close, and your soul didn't give up, is because something higher was still holding you, even when you couldn't feel it. There were battles happening around you that you couldn't see, clashes in the spiritual realm, negotiations between light and shadow. And because of who you are, not who you've become, but who you've always been, even the demons assigned to derail you were restricted. They were on a leash. They could only do so much. And here's the secret. They don't want you to know. Some of those demons were actually reassigned, forced by spiritual law to now guard the very soul they once tried to torment. Because when a chosen one remembers, when you finally say, "Enough, I know who I am, I know what I carry, I know what I'm here to do," the entire spiritual hierarchy shifts. Entities that once moved freely through your life, they get locked out. Familiar spirits that once whispered lies into your thoughts, silenced. Portals that were left open through trauma and ancestral wounds, closed by force, because your energy no longer gives them permission. And more than that, Some of those forces are now being used to clear paths for you, used to block people who shouldn't have access to you, used to cause disruption only to expose truth and accelerate your growth. Not because those spirits are on your side. They're not. But because they've been subdued, because the light inside you activated something ancient, something that even the darkness must obey. See, in the spiritual realm, alignment is everything. When you are in full alignment, when your thoughts, your choices, your energy, and your mission are vibrating at the frequency of truth, even the enemy has to kneel to that frequency. It doesn't mean the battles stop. It means the outcome is already sealed, and darkness is now just playing a role in your elevation. Every hardship, working for you now, every delay, a redirection with purpose. Every person that walked away, a divine removal, orchestrated to protect your path, sometimes by forces that seem dark, but are now commanded to obey the bigger plan. This is the part of the story people rarely talk about, because it's easier to say good versus evil. But the truth is deeper. It's order versus chaos, and your soul was encoded to bring divine order back into spaces of chaos, even if it meant walking alone, even if it meant being misunderstood, even if it meant carrying a frequency that repels the very world you were sent to heal. Because your mission isn't to be accepted. Your mission is to be authentic, to live in such truth that anything fake, dark, or manipulative cannot survive near you. And that's exactly what's happening. You've noticed it. People fall away without warning. Opportunities dissolve before you say yes, only for better ones to rise in their place. Environments that used to drain you now feel like dead zones because your spirit is too evolved for stagnant energy. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual filtration. And sometimes the filtering is done by forces you'd never expect. Yes, even demons. They don't like you, but they're not in charge. You are walking under divine orders now. And if that means using the very tools once forged against you as part of your advancement, so be it. It's biblical. Time and time again, the very giants that stood in the way of chosen ones became the stepping stones to their destiny. You are no different. You were never abandoned, only refined, never cursed, only chosen. And now, every attempt to break you has been flipped into fuel, because there is a decree over your life that no dark force can override. That decree says, "This one belongs to the light. Touch not my anointed." Every knee must bow, every tongue must confess, every energy must align. And so it is. What you've endured was not in vain. You've been trained in the unseen. You've been forged by pain that others couldn't survive. And you've been crowned, not by gold, not by men, but by the scars that prove you made it through. The darkness couldn't destroy you, so now it serves you. You've heard the phrase, all things work together for good. But what you probably weren't told is that even darkness, even entities, people, and energies that were once against you can be rearranged by the divine to work for your evolution. Yes, even the demons. Not because they suddenly turned into allies, but because when your purpose is aligned, when your frequency is true, when your light becomes so powerful that it cannot be ignored, the spiritual rules change. Dark forces are no longer allowed to devour you. They're commanded to kneel. And that's where you are now. You've crossed a threshold. This isn't the same battlefield you were on years ago. That version of you, the one who was unsure, confused, disconnected, no longer exists. That was your training ground. Now you've entered your assignment zone, the season where everything becomes strategic, even opposition, because now every enemy becomes a servant of your growth. Let's break this down deeper. When you were first awakening, your energy was raw, unprotected. You were absorbing things you didn't understand. You were empathic, intuitive, but untrained. That made you vulnerable. It drew attacks, spiritual confusion, and emotional betrayal. But instead of folding, you learned, you discovered how to protect your peace, how to guard your energy, how to pray with authority, how to command clarity in chaos. Every lesson you learned was watched not just by angels, but also by entities that once fed on your weakness and now recognize your spiritual rank. See, in the unseen realm, there are ranks, frequencies, orders, and those who walk in divine alignment. They radiate a kind of light that speaks louder than any words. It's not about how loud you pray. It's about the authority behind your voice and the ones who used to test your limits. Now recognize they're not allowed to cross certain lines because the decree has been issued, the mantle has been placed, and whether the darkness likes it or not, it now has boundaries when it comes to you. This is why strange things happen when you're around. Why environments shift. Why people suddenly confess things to you out of nowhere. Why manipulation fails in your presence. Because there are forces working through you now, not just to protect you, but to purify everything around you. You are not just surviving spiritual warfare anymore. You are becoming a vessel of divine authority. And because of that, even demons are being used to carry out parts of the plan. Let's be clear, they still hate the light. They still resist truth, but they're not above the law. And the law, the one inscribed on your soul before you were even born, says, "Greater than no weapon formed against this one shall prosper, and every tongue that rises in judgment shall be condemned." That's not poetry. That's a spiritual contract. And when you live in agreement with that truth, when you let go of bitterness, ego, and revenge, when you walk with integrity, humility, and boldness, nothing can stop what's been divinely ordered for you. Even resistance becomes your classroom. Even betrayal becomes your GPS. Even demons become your unwitting messengers. They might think they're attacking, but in reality, they're revealing what still needs healing. They're exposing who doesn't belong in your circle. They're forcing you into isolation so that you can hear God alone. And when their purpose is complete, they're dismissed, or worse, for them, they're reassigned to guard the very gates they tried to break down. That's right, the same spirit that tried to distract you in the night now trembles at the sound of your voice. The same energy that tried to steal your peace now flees when you walk into a room, because you carry light that commands obedience, not because of who you are, but because of what's inside you. Chosen one, your presence isn't random. Your awakening wasn't accidental, and the opposition you faced was proof of how important your role is in the shift that's happening across this planet. Yes, planet. You didn't come here just to survive a job, a relationship, or a status. You came here to anchor light on a level that resets bloodlines, transforms environments, and dismantles systems of control. You came here to interrupt generational patterns, to see what others refused to see, to feel what others numbed themselves to avoid, to hear the call and answer it even when your voice trembled. That kind of courage, it doesn't go unnoticed, not in the heavens, not in the shadows, and certainly not by the very spirits that once tried to silence you, because they know something now. You remembered, and once a chosen one remembers who they are, the whole game changes. You no longer chase validation. You no longer explain your light to those committed to darkness. You no longer beg to be seen, because you know you're sent, not for popularity, but for purpose. And your purpose is unfolding with divine precision. Every delay was alignment. Every loss was protection. Every shadow you faced was preparation. And now you walk in a season where even forces of darkness must report to your calling. It doesn't make you invincible. It makes you accountable, because the more power you carry, the more responsibility you hold. This isn't about ego, it's about stewardship. Your light is not a spotlight, it's a torch meant to ignite others. So use it wisely. Let your presence cleanse rooms, not just fill them. Let your silence speak when words won't do justice. Let your love, fierce, honest, unshakable, be the greatest proof of who you truly are. And when darkness rises, stand, because even the demons now know you are marked, and that mark doesn't fade. Now that you understand how spiritual law can reassign even the forces that once tried to destroy you, it's time to understand the deeper reason behind it, the one that most people will never hear in church, never read in a book, and never grasp unless they live it. Because this truth is not for everyone. It's only for the ones who were chosen. And yes, that includes you. You weren't just chosen to be protected. You were chosen to become a channel through which divine will gets done on earth, even when it contradicts logic, offends tradition, and breaks systems that have ruled people in silence for centuries. And that's exactly why certain spiritual forces, yes, even dark ones, are now required to assist your destiny, not block it, because your assignment doesn't just change your life, it shifts timelines. Entire realities bend around your obedience. Let that sink in. You were born into a family where trauma was inherited like a last name, but you said, "It ends with me." You grew up in places that normalized smallness, bitterness, and fear, but something inside you always rebelled. You tried to fit in, to blend in, to dim yourself, but every time you did, something in your spirit ached, and eventually you surrendered to it. You stopped trying to explain why you couldn't fake your smile, tolerate shallow connections, or stay in environments that drained your soul. And instead, you walked away, not because you were weak, but because something stronger was calling you forward. And ever since that moment, ever since you chose alignment over acceptance, your life stopped operating by the same spiritual rules as before. That's when the real shift began. See, most people are bound by the energies they entertain, but you've been purged, fire-tested, refined in silence. You've cried out in empty rooms, doubted your sanity, wrestled with shadows that had no names, but you didn't break, you transformed. And now, when the spirit realm looks at you, it doesn't see a victim or a wanderer, it sees a vessel, a portal between realms, a soul who walks with divine assignments encoded in your very presence. And for that reason, your protection is non-negotiable. Your guidance is supervised, and the energy around you, both light and dark, is orchestrated. What looks like chaos on the surface is carefully choreographed warfare, where even your enemies serve a purpose. This is the part no one talks about. Demons aren't loyal to chaos. They're loyal to order. They understand rank. They understand authority. And when the divine issues a command, even they must obey. This is why, in ancient texts, we see stories of dark spirits being silenced, restrained, even used to reveal truth, not because they chose to be good, but because they were overruled. And that's what's happening around you now. You've been overruled by light. Your destiny has been marked as non-negotiable. The timeline you carry is critical. And so, when interference arises, it's not random. It's permitted resistance, not to destroy you, but to prepare you, because the power you are stepping into can't be given lightly. It has to be forged. And the only way to forge true power is through exposure to fire. So yes, those attacks you felt, they were training. Those betrayals, they were assignments. Even your loneliness was sacred isolation, designed to sever you from false connections, so your discernment could sharpen. And now you're seeing the fruits of that. Refinement. Doors that wouldn't open are unlocking. Rooms you used to beg to enter are beneath you. People who rejected you are suddenly drawn to your energy, though they don't even know why. It's because your frequency changed. You are no longer asking for entry. You carry the keys, and the ones who once worked against you, they now guard your territory, because your presence isn't just blessed. It's protected by law, spiritual law, universal law, an agreement that was written long before your body took its first breath. And here's the wild part. Some of the very demons that tried to silence you in one season are now blocked from touching you in this one. They've been reassigned, not by choice, but by command, because your growth made you untouchable, your surrender made you sovereign, and your obedience made you a force. So don't be surprised when you notice spiritual dynamics flipping. Don't be alarmed when people who once caused harm start acting strangely kind, or when attacks fall flat, or when sudden insights drop into your spirit as if whispered from beyond the veil. You're not imagining it. You're just finally walking in the authority you were born to carry. And with that authority comes a different type of reality. One where the usual rules don't apply. One where weapons form but never prosper. Where enemies gather but scatter in confusion. Where curses reverse. Where delays speed up. Where even the things sent to break you start building you instead. This is the power of divine reversal, and it's happening in your life right now. Not because you asked for it, but because you were assigned to it. Because your mission on earth isn't optional, it's activated. And now, everything in the unseen world is aligning to make sure you complete it. Even the darkness, even the forces that don't understand love, but understand order. Even the ones who tried to curse you, now forced to witness your rise. That's why you're still here. That's why the worst didn't break you. Because your destiny wasn't just protected, it was enforced. And now the very powers that once tried to silence your voice are echoing your truth, because they don't serve you out of love. They serve you out of recognition. They see your rank, and they have no choice but to obey. come a long way to arrive at this moment, not just in time, but in truth. And now, everything hidden is surfacing. The veil is lifting. And you're beginning to realize nothing about your path was random. Not the betrayals, not the abandonment, not even the spiritual attacks that once left you paralyzed at 3 a.m. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned. See, before the world ever saw your value, the unseen realm already knew who you were. And that's exactly why it came for you early. Before you knew how to protect yourself, before you knew what you carried, before you knew the weight of your light, you were under attack because your presence alone sent ripples through the invisible. You disturbed principalities just by waking up in the morning. You bent frequencies just by refusing to bow to fear. You refused to sell out your soul for approval, and that terrified the ones who thrive in conformity. But here's the paradox most people miss. The moment you said yes to your higher path, everything that once tried to own you was forced to serve you. The curse failed. The opposition backfired. And now, the very forces that conspired against you are compelled by divine law to assist your rise. And this isn't just metaphor, it's spiritual reality. You've entered a phase of your journey where protection isn't requested, it's enforced. Intervention isn't hoped for, it's guaranteed. Because when the Creator marks a soul for divine purpose, nothing in hell or on earth can cancel what's been written. And yes, sometimes the protection doesn't look like ease. Sometimes it looks like rejection. Sometimes it looks like solitude. Sometimes it looks like being pushed into isolation with nothing but your prayers and your breaking heart. But even those moments, especially those moments, were proof that something sacred was being guarded. You weren't being punished. You were being preserved. And now, what once felt like pain was preparation. That's why your discernment sharpened. That's why your intuition grew. That's why you no longer tolerate fake energy, shallow intentions, or environments that try to silence your voice. Because you were never meant to blend in. You were never designed to follow the crowd. You were born to lead a new frequency. You're not here to fix a broken system. You're here to replace it by simply walking in your truth. And do you want to know something wild? The very forces that once tried to bury your light are now assigned to shield it, not out of love, but out of recognition. They see the authority you walk in. They see the mark on your spirit. They understand that touching you is no longer permitted, not because you are invincible, but because you are commissioned. There's a difference. You still feel pain. You still have to heal. You still have to face hard things. But now, you do it from a place of knowing you are not alone, knowing your steps are ordered, and knowing that even the darkness must now bow when you speak with clarity. This is spiritual maturity, and this is why your life is changing. Because while others fight battles in the flesh, you've learned to shift atmospheres in silence. You've learned how to pray in your power. You've learned that your energy, your vibration sends signals before your mouth ever speaks. And the moment you accepted that, the rules changed. Now, you're the one who shifts the temperature when you walk into a room. Now, you're the one who senses intentions before they form into words. Now, you're the one who doesn't even have to clap back because the energy around you does it for you. Let that sink in. When the Most High places a calling on your life, you don't need to seek revenge. You don't need to chase validation. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You just walk in alignment, and everything not meant for you falls away, or better yet, is redirected to protect you instead. This is the hidden reality the world doesn't understand. Chosen ones don't need to manipulate outcomes. You were born with spiritual authority, and the more you surrender to that, the more creation itself bends to help you complete your mission. This is why timing now feels different, why synchronicities are increasing, why you feel deeply at peace, even when the world outside feels chaotic, because your life is no longer reacting to external events. It's flowing from internal assignment, and that assignment, it's not just to survive, it's to transmit something divine into this world through your energy, your choices, your presence, your obedience. You are a vessel for a higher will, and for that reason, the spiritual realm must clear your path, even if that means flipping the roles of what once stood in your way. Even demons know better now. They can't touch you. They're forced to bow, because light always wins. And when light is anchored in a soul that has been tested, purified, and obedient, that light becomes undeniable. So don't doubt your power. Don't underestimate what's happening behind the scenes on your behalf. Yes, the people around you may never understand. Yes, your journey will still require faith. But know this, you are not crazy. You are not alone. And you are not just being lucky. You are being escorted by spiritual forces that have been reassigned to ensure your destiny is fulfilled. They see who you are, they see what you carry, and they know the truth. You cannot be stopped. If this message resonated with your soul, it's because your spirit remembers the assignment. You're not just hearing these words, you're waking up to your true identity. So honor that. Let go of anything that tries to shrink your power. Trust the unfolding, even when it makes no sense. Speak less, observe more. Protect your energy like the sacred force it is. And most of all, stay aligned, because the more you walk in your divine truth, the more everything, even what once opposed you, will rise to assist you. They didn't see this coming, but heaven did, and now, so do you.